Meet the new boss, same as the old boss. Hello to everyone, welcome back to INC Live and welcome to 2025. We hope you had a fantastic festive period and everything that you hope and wish for over the next 12 months comes to fruition. My name is Carl Bimage. I am joined by the man on the right hand side of my screen. You might consider him the Roger Daltrey to my Pete Townsend. He's my friend and yours. It's Joe Neal. Joe, thank you very much for joining us.
Glad to be here. I am very pumped. I'm glad to be the New York City ball to your festive popping of fireworks or gunshots. I don't know. It's like a weird tradition in some cultures. I won't call out any in particular. To fire guns in the air.
Yeah. We were supposed to, but the weather was so bad they didn't do it up in Edinburgh.
Oh, for us, it's just random people in their backyard. So all last night, we got to play the game of, is that fireworks or gunshots? Some cultures do it.
A very dark side... I have to lose my voice here. A very dark side way to start the show there, Joe.
It's kind of fun. It was kind of funny. I'm so used to it. It doesn't feel dark to me, but I can understand why it would.
Hopefully, though, this show coming up here will be a lot more light-sided because we are jumping on the bandwagon of a lot of MMA podcasts and we are doing a 2024 end-of-year review. You might consider it a bit of a mini awards show as well. We'll explain how things will play out over the next couple of minutes. Before we do, though, Joe, it gives us an opportunity to talk about the sport of mixed martial arts over the past 12 months because I think if you speak to some people, they seem quite divided over how good this year's been. Because on the one hand, we had some real marquee moments. UFC 300, big celebration for the company, and a stacked show which, unlike 200, I would say delivered. You also had Noche UFC in the Sphere, which surpassed everybody's expectations on how good that was. But at the same time though, we're still doing Apex Fight Nights. Some of the pay-per-views this year lacking a little bit in star power. It feels like, do the marquee moments overshadow what was, in my opinion, a bit of a mediocre year?
I mean, I don't think so. I think this year was definitely a year of peaks and valleys. At times, it felt like, 300 was amazing. Noche UFC might be my favorite card of the year overall. That said, the co-main event in Noche UFC was pretty bad.
I wonder why.
It's bad. I mean, in fairness, if it was Fighter A and Fighter B, we wouldn't like it either. It just happened to have the worst outcome possible. The main event was pretty cool. Anyways, there was how many nameless fight nights have we ran through this year? Gaziv was a main eventer this year.
Rodrigo Nascimento was another one.
Oh.
Just like any random heavyweight ended up headlining a fight card. And that one had a crowd as well. That was St. Louis.
Yeah, I felt really bad for him. They probably were like, Derek Lewis, St. Louis, you goofs, they'll eat it up. And I'm like, oh my god. There's been some it's definitely not been a good year. I think I would say 5.5, 6 out of 10 for me this year overall, because I think some of the lows were much worse than some of the highs, but or there was more lows than there was highs, but some of the highs were pretty good. So I think it's above the 50% range for sure, at least. But not been the best year for MMA as a whole. I think you can look at UFC matchmaking and go, oof. Usually UFC matchmaking, I think, is a good way to tell how good a year is. If their matchmaking's been great, then the year's been great.
I think the big one that stood out for me when it comes to the matchmaking is the title fights. I think if you had to sort of look at a narrative over the previous 12 months, I think it's the UFC not valuing merit as much as they used to. Because I think some of the people who've got title shots this year, it's either people who happen to be in the right place at the right time, or it's people getting the shot over somebody far more deserving. And I mean, don't get me wrong,
205.
like 205, I think is the biggest example. Like with Khalil Roundtree, you could even say what's been happening with flyweight, Steve Erster getting a title fight this year, and even stuff like Dustin Poirier, who that fight with Makhachev was fantastic, but getting that shot off beating Saint-Denis over Sarukian.
It's pretty bad. That was really bad. It's definitely been a really rough year UFC matchmaking wise, and Daniel Cormier has nearly short circuited trying to defend the company on it, right? Like he's because he's their biggest. I don't want to sound disrespectful here.
He's playing the long game.
Like,
he knows where the bread is buttered.
Oh yeah, he's a top company man. You know, the UFC, Dana White could walk out, pull a gun, and or no, I won't say that. Dana White could walk out and with a baseball bat and like crack a random crowd member, and Cormier and a UFC branded bat at that, baseball bat at that, and Daniel Cormier would be like, well, I think that's just a better experience for that fan. And he's definitely a big company guy. So it's kind of funny seeing him go. Stipe. Ankalaev. Who doesn't want to see Khalil Roundtree gulp? It's really funny.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to when he has to try and defend something truly egregious.
Oh man, me too. Or he just won't talk about it. That's what he's gonna do. He's gonna be like, I'm not aware of what you're referring to. Looking around, sweating. Well, or he'll just he'll happen to eat Popeyes as every time we try and ask him a question about it.
So the way this show is going to work is we have put it to the public. We've got ourselves a little bit of a mini award show going on. So we put 8 questions to yourself and also to the wider public. And we also got 2 other questions relating to the channel itself. So before we actually get to the awards part of the show, I actually have some stats here regarding both INC Live and the main channel. So we'll start off with INC Live and how we did over the course of the past 12 months. So 924 subscribers. So we are up 203. 25,781 total views in 2024. And your male demographics. So how many men, what percentage of men watched INC Live compared to women, would you say?
So I know this number, I'll admit, because you and me have discussed this before. And I've jokingly taken credit for the amount of women that watch the channel because of Look at Me. Come on.
I actually read somewhere, like they do these end of year polls everywhere, and I read somewhere that the Kelsey brothers were voted as the most attractive podcasters of 2024. We were robbed.
I think we were robbed. Is it because they're only getting voted because if they I have a personal theory that if Taylor Swift began dating someone who was unattractive, her fans would be like, no, he's gorgeous, just to not appease their god. There is some serious religious thing, and I go, the chick who sang that Romeo and Juliet song from when I was in 9th grade, it shows how old I am.
When ironically, that's one of her better songs.
I like that song a lot, actually. Not enough to put on my Spotify, but I've always been that's this chick. She's that good? Then I hear it and I go, ooh, she's not. Good on you. But we definitely got robbed. But I believe, if I remember correctly, we discussed it and the number was 98% of men.
98.4 to be precise. 98.2 for the main channel itself. So a slightly larger percentage of women watch the main INC over live, unfortunately.
You're more popular with the ladies than I am.
One place you are more popular though is both the Philippines and South Africa. They were 2 of your most watched nations, 5th and 4th, behind Canada, the UK, and the USA. 45% of the subscribers, of the viewers, were from the United States.
Philippines and South America. That's pretty sweet.
Yeah. And
Probably because people have said that I look Filipino, and I go, I don't think so, but sure, I appreciate it. Thank you.
And that big South African number also played a part when it comes to the most watched videos. So at number 5 on your most watched videos of the year was the UFC 305 reaction, DDP the MVP. Fourth place, the 129 retro review. Third place, 156. Second place, Diaz versus Daly. And number 1, with 1,307 views over the past 12 months, UFC 100 retro review.
See, at the beginning, if looking at the list of all the videos we had on the channel and all the retro reviews, I would have picked Strikeforce Daily to be number 1, or the Pride one. But interesting.
I think the audience is always going to go for something UFC over a non-UFC promotion. Honestly, I was surprised Diaz versus Daly did so well, because Strikeforce is very much a product of that sort of 2010, 2011 fan.
I thought a Diaz brother would help out a lot on it, personally. For B, Pride, I thought Pride would do well because Pride never dies. I almost did the Terminator theme instead, so I pulled back. I went for do the theme song on my desk. They're so awesome. I will say I have a very funny song for the awards in my head, and I'm not gonna say what it is out loud, but I know as a fan of South Park, you'll get this reference.
While you send that to me, I will go through the stats for the main channel itself. So at the time that I took all of these notes, because we have had a few other videos which have done surprisingly well, so these figures might be a little bit out of date. 65,295 subscribers, which is up 2,200 from this time last year. Just over 1 million total views in 2024. Our largest age demographic, 41%, was the 25 to 34. Our most watched nation slightly different to yourself. It's Germany, Australia, Canada, the UK, and with 48.4% of the viewership, the United States. Our most watched...
Same big three, right?
The big three, Canada, the UK, and the USA. Yeah, and Guten Tag to all of our German followers, number 5 there. In terms of the most watched videos, now I have to admit only one video from 2024 made this top 5. At number 5, that old stalwart, still doing well, the best referee moments in MMA.
It's a good one. Positive one too.
It is, which I was really surprised by. It was one of the reasons I made that video, was because a lot of content on YouTube does lean quite negative. So I thought, you know what, referees can be quite good. Let's celebrate some of their better moments.
I feel like negative videos tend to do better which I always think is kind of funny. But a positive one is very fun.
Yes. Which is ironic, given that number 4 on this list was the worst fighters of the Apex era.
Hilarious.
And sort of like a time capsule to that sort of like weird early days of like the lockdown era, when you did have people like Liang Na, Braxton Smith, that kind of fighting in the UFC. Harry Hunsucker, our boy.
Our boy. Braxton Smith, that name sounds like a jobber in wrestling. Like local talent, Braxton Smith taking on
Razor Ramon.
Ooh. Oh, Razor Ramon. Hey, what's your finish? I can't wait to kick out of it. Hey, tuck your chin when you take the razor's edge. That's what he used to always tell jobbers. To
be fair, Braxton kind of was a jobber in MMA. Like, he gassed out after like a minute and got stopped by Parker Porter.
Excellent. Our boy, Parker Porter House Pettis. If you combine.
Number 3, Royce Gracie's failed MMA comeback.
That's awesome.
And a spoiler alert, I am hoping to do another failed comeback video at some point in 2025, so stay tuned to that one. Number 2, our only 2024 video which made the list. What happened to Darren Till?
Yeah, I think him being in the news really helped out that one.
And at number 1, a connection to number 3. Each probably helped each other in terms of getting so many views. The Gracie family's worst moments.
Which is really funny to me.
Like, I'd always bought into the story surrounding the Gracies as this kind of like revered, beloved sort of pioneer family in mixed martial arts. It wasn't until I made the video that I realized how much negativity the family actually has.
Lots. It's pretty bad. They're a very divisive family. I do think there are very funny things in the comments section of that video, where I believe someone was a couple people were like, "What if we made a video on your family and see how your family's worst moments?" And all I can think of is, Hickson, stop it. Like, Hickson, calm down.
I did have somebody saying, do one on the Nurmagomedovs. They don't bloody lose.
They don't lose enough. Hopefully, Marab helps remedy that. Yeah. And Paul Hughes, because Paul Hughes is taking on one of them, isn't he?
Yeah, he's fighting Usman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Kamaru Usman Nurmagomedov.
I actually remember.
Very confusing.
I actually remember the joke. You know, I think it was around sort of mid 2009. The story went around about Usman signing for Bellator, and you got to bear in mind this is at the height of lay and pray Kamaru. So the press release comes out. I think Abdul Manap actually said. I think it was when he was still alive, and he said something like, "Don't get me wrong, Usman likes to finish fights." And I was thinking, that's the only time that sentence will ever be said. And then, of course, Kamaru turns into this fantastic champion.
Starts knocking dudes out. I do love. I don't know why. I remember Francis Ngannou. Whenever he wrestled against Cyril Gane, people were like going, "Wow, Francis Nurmagomedov," and he goes, "No, Francis Usman." And I went, was he confused? Did he think of this guy? Like, did he get mixed up? Because he said that like right after the fight. Probably tired and exhausted. You had one knee in that fight. And you had Dana telling you better lose, you goof. Like every time in between rounds. So
and
stop wrestling him, you goof. Strike with him.
And that is still Brian Campbell's biggest claim to fame. Like, if you go on any episode of Morning Combat now, he still big ups the fact that he said Francis was going to wrestle.
That's awesome. I still ride the high of telling people Chris Weidman was going to beat Anderson Silva. I still brag about that.
I think my big one was Jan beating Race. Because a lot of people were still high on the Race hype train after the Jones fight.
I thought he was going to just beat everybody else. I was like, well, that was the only chance you guys had of beating this guy. But he's on the comeback now.
He is.
Which is fun. Which is fun because in terms of skill set, he's still very good. He just has a durability question mark now. But in terms of skill set, very good.
And light heavyweight's so flaky right now. And we all know that they don't want to give Ankalaev a title fight. So if you have at least one win and you're ranked in the top 10, you're probably going to get the next shot over him. Just where the UFC
Could you
is
imagine?
these days.
Could you imagine Dominic Reyes getting a title fight before Dominic Reyes gets a title fight before Ankalaev does?
The Pereira fans are pushing for Krylov right now. They want Krylov over Ankalaev.
Wait, really?
They're saying
Nikita Krylov is my boy, but like.
Well, they're saying stuff like Ankalaev looked awful against Rakic, and he's only beat Johnny Walker and Rakic, who were on losing streaks, and Krylov has a longer winning streak. That's the narrative they're going with right now.
That's asinine. I don't like that at all.
What you are going to like, Joe, is what we're going to be opening this award show with. So, we're going to bookend the show, as it were, with our two channel conscious votes. So our final award is going to be the best INC video of the year. Our first one is for the retro review. Now this is your own little baby. I remember when you first started off on the channel, you had this idea of rewatching and recapping classic events. And it actually turned out to be a lot more successful than I ever thought. It's one of the most popular subjects that we have on INC Live. So we did 11 videos over the course of the year. You can see those on your screen right now. Were there any that stand out for you as ones you particularly liked, ones you disliked? Which way do you think the vote's going to go?
Oh, man. I'm a big fan of 129. 129's a personal favorite of mine because that card had like I mean that oh my god that Aldo Hominick fight's crazy. Getting to talk about Randy Couture is pretty incredible for me.
You wanted to show off your
Um,
GSP impression. That's why you liked it deep down.
I mean, I'm not gonna act like that isn't true. 156 is my favorite fight of all time, so that's a huge one for me. Um, Strikeforce Daily is what I show people whenever they go, whenever like anyone says like, oh, you do, oh, wait, like what kind of videos do you do? I was like, oh, well, here's like the biggest ones I do. I always send them Strikeforce DS Daily because it's a non-UFC card, so they can see like, hey, I know more about than just UFC. One of my weirdest like pet peeves is when I tell people about MMA and they go, oh, you mean UFC? And I'm like, oh,
There's much more to the sport than the
yeah,
UFC.
yeah. It's like, yeah, sure, yeah, because I know some people like in high school they'd be like, yeah, I'm a big UFC fan, so I can watch a lot of it. It's like MMA, like yeah, MMA. They go, no, just UFC. Like MMA is a sport. It's like basketball is the sport. NBA is the organization. Oh, it's like not oh. It's like you're like it just weirdly irks me. Um, Invicta One is awesome. I love that. Uh, we had fun with it, is what I'll say. 156 is a big one for me because that's my favorite fight ever. Like, that's like my perfect fight for me. That fight and this one here, Boss Rutan. I'm very tired, so I apologize. My spine's slipping.
What were there any
Uh,
you didn't really
my
enjoy doing?
126, Silva Bisping. Um,
You do realise
165's
there's going
good.
to be an Anderson Silva fan that's going to put two and two together here and think you're some kind of hater.
So I was at the time, okay, or at the around this 126 era, I was at the time, right? Like I will say that, like I was an Anderson hater, because I'm a Dan Henderson guy, and he beat Dan Henderson. That's not cool. Um, and I was hoping that Chael would beat him. I was hoping that I knew Vitor wasn't going to beat him. Admittingly, I was like, this is bad matchmaking. Um, and
So briefly, you were the
but
world's only Yushin Nakami fan.
Yeah, I was hoping he would do it because I was like, well, he's not just going to get destroyed on the feet as like Chael would have. Like maybe he's training with Chael. Maybe he'll take him down like Chael does, like wrestles him like Chael does, and just didn't happen. He was broken after the first punch, and it was like, ooh, all right, this is over. Um, Yushin Okami though has a perfectly clean win against him though, but no, it isn't an Anderson thing. Those cards just are bad. These cards are just really bad. Um, I can understand a theory. I've heard people say that they love when I watch a bad card because I slowly go insane as the card progresses, and that's fun. I will say, like that's fair. I totally understand that perspective, but from the guy who has to make it,
I
it's
am
not very
waiting for
fun.
the guy who nominates like one of the notoriously bad cards, like UFC 33 or 208 or something like that.
I think I know what it's going to be first. Is we're going to get a guy who's like, I remember the worst card I've ever seen. You're going to have to watch uh, Tim Bosch take on Hector Lombard.
Oh,
No.
149, that's awful. That has that Sean Jordan fight as well, which is just, he's like the original Holly Holm.
Yeah, Sean Jordan, Czech Congo. Yeah, I believe it's that fight where Czech Congo is trying to find a way to low blow him with a knee, while Sean Jordan is like, okay, I tried a hook kick, time to wall install. It's like no, this is awful.
So we do.
I if I shot that one, I would be tempted to be like, I would be tempted to get a haircut in between, like film part of it and be like, I gotta take a break, I'll be back, and then come back
Few
with like my
moments
hair
later.
super short. That sounds really funny, actually. I should do that for a bad card. Next time we do a bad card, I'm gonna hope it's around when I need a haircut.
So we have the results here for you. Number 3,
Mhm.
Strikeforce Diaz versus Daly.
Big one. Love that one.
Number 2, UFC 100.
Makes sense. It's a good card. Really good card.
And
I,
and a surprise
underrated
winner
card.
with 46% of the vote. Ironically enough, it's the least watched retro review, but the one that most people enjoyed. Invicta 1 is our winner.
That is so awesome to me.
I keep telling you, Joe, there is a surprising amount of Sally Krumdiak fans in the world.
I keep doubting him, and I keep running into him at the grocery store.
You know, this result really surprised me, because I remember when I posted
Stunning.
the poll, because we always like to do themed months on the channel. And obviously March came around. March is sort of like Women's MMA month. So we thought, you know what, let's do a classic Invicta card. So we pulled them up. We had like classic events, like 3 title fights. Invicta 5 was another one because it has that Waters and Penne match. And Invicta 1 won the poll, but the majority of the comments was very much of the likes of, lol, why are you doing
Women.
this?
Oh,
I hate
wow.
women's MMA. I'm not going to watch, stuff like that. So I was really surprised to see this win the poll.
I love doing non-UFC cards because I can kind of I get to talk in more detail about the setup of a fight and the setup of the promotion and what the promotion's all about as well. So doing Strikeforce cards are sweet because of that. Pride cards are awesome. I love doing Pride cards. But Pride's my favorite organization ever, so there's some bias. But doing Invicta 1 was really fun. That card, it's their first one, and it isn't the most exciting one, but some fights on there are pretty good. Invicta as a promotion, though, is awesome. Yes. Invicta's great.
I always think the real attraction with Invicta, especially those early Invicta cards, is seeing those sort of future stars in the very early stage of their career. Because I think it's an Invicta 5, and it's like Rose versus Tisha. And it's a really good fight, but both of them are 1-0 and 2-0 in their career.
Yeah, it's insane. I remember watching Rose's debut fight in the promotion because they were like, "Hey, Pat, this is really funny." I remember getting out of church late and checking my phone because I knew there was an Invicta card and I was really curious what was going on. And it was Pat Barry's girlfriend wins with a flying armbar. And I was like, oh, I'm going to go home and watch that. So I went home, I pulled it up, and I go Rose Namajunas or Hunas, trying to go what's that? What is that last name? And then I go, oh, it's Pat Barry's girlfriend though. Then I see the age and I went, uh-oh. I'm not joking. That was that's my first time. And I was like, yo, Pat Barry's 40. What, hold on. She's 20 something, 21, 22. What is this? What are we doing here? Are we okay with this? And it's how long have they been dating? Oh, well, I'll just assume Pat Barry's got game and he just started dating her. They've been dating 5 years? Oh, no.
Oh, dear.
He's known her since how old? Oh, no.
We've got to be very careful when it comes to talking about Rose and Pat Barry because they will probably demonetize the channel.
True, and I could see them being the type to sue.
So, before we get ourselves into legal trouble, we're going to move on to our first real poll, which is the Knockout of the Year. Now, spoiler alert, there was one big obvious winner. But before we talk about that knockout, was there anything else that really took your mind from 2024 in terms of the best knockout?
No, I'm pulling up the nominees this year, so we had some really good ones. I mean, that Muslim Salikov one is pretty sweet. From Jan Figueroa. I mean, man, Ribovic on that Terrence McKinney one is insane.
People forget that.
Yeah, that one's incredible. Shi Ming versus Zhao Canfang is, if it wasn't for the win, that's my number 2 pick, right? The winner. I think we all know
what's going to win.
Yeah. I full disclosure, I also voted in this, and I voted for the winner. I had no idea that if it wasn't for that KO, this Shiming versus Xiao Fang would have been number one, right? Because if we were even to go, it's fighter A, fighter B, take out full context. The only context relevant is the KO itself. It's like, oh, well, then the winner doesn't win. You know what I mean? Is in my mind, because what makes the one that is going to win is the context behind everything. So,
like, this was a prelim fight on an Asian fight night versus a fight that took place on a much bigger card. But I do love the story behind that. I love that. I think Xi Ming is a very endearing personality. She had the story with her being a doctor, her family supposedly not knowing what she does on the side. It was a fight as well where I had her down 2-0. So she needed a finish. And obviously she ends up getting it, spectacular fashion, gets herself into the UFC. So I love the story behind that finish.
Mm-hmm. Being a doctor is the best base for MMA, turns out. I think one that could have easily been on here for me was from the last card. Was it Jacoby Petrino?
Good one. Reminds me of Usman versus Masvidal.
Yeah, that because there's something about that, like catching them mid parry or mid punch, and they just kind of like their whole body like flips and turns, is kind of a crazy one. That's one of my favorites this year for sure too.
A couple of others which didn't get nominated as well. I think Oliveira versus Sapai, that flying knee in the apex.
Oh yeah.
Shara Bullet, the double spinning back fist.
That one's really good. That one's kind of insane. Yeah. Like, because he throws the first one and it's partially blocked, and he goes, "Oh, that didn't work." Whoa. That one's nuts.
I think there's always a little bit of a disclaimer when it comes to Shara, though, because I'm always wary of the matchmaking. It's a bit like, you know, when MVP was in Bellator and he was landing like all these like flying knees and spectacular spinning kicks. It's like, yes, they're impressive, they're highlight reel moments, but look at who you're doing it against.
Man, I thought of another one. This probably would have been my number 2, but only because of what kind of KO it was, and I'm a sucker for these. Bryce Mitchell, Kron Gracie.
The slam.
Yeah, because the second I saw him like frame the head, I instantly went, "Oh no, this is what's his face?
Gerald Harris.
No, that too. Yeah,
Gerald Harris was the king of the slam.
Yeah, and I think his son is slamming people now. But there was someone else too. What's his face? Monkey King?
Jared Brooks.
Yeah, no, not Jared Brooks.
Oh, Jordan Levitt.
Jordan Levitt.
I was thinking of Monkey Guard. Sorry.
Yeah, Monkey Guard is Jared Brooks. Yeah, Jordan Levitt on old boy from Tulsa, Oklahoma. Tough 5.
Matt Wyman.
Matt Wyman. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I forgot his name. Because in that fight, you see Matt Wyman go to pull guard, and you see him just instantly frame the head, and I went, "Oh, here's the Jordan Levitt." Like, and so because that's the first thing I thought of in that Bryce Mitchell fight, was like, he's gonna Jordan Levitt him, and he was out. Like, what's so funny about that is that fight was like such a stinker up until that moment. It wasn't a stinker; it just wasn't great. Like, it was
Didn't it end in like 30 seconds though?
No, I meant the Mitchell one.
Oh yeah, that was awful.
Was like a stinker.
Was an awful fight.
Yeah. It was like borderline stinker for me.
Every time Kron pulled guard, I have to admit I morbidly enjoyed it, only because every time Kron pulled guard, you could hear the crowd just going, "Ah!"
We were cracking up at that. We were cracking up at the house. So that's probably part of my enjoyment. We were laughing at how much of a clown Kron Gracie is. When in the UFC, it's really funny to us. So because like it's funny, he like frames the head and slams down, and when he lands, he's like just kind of throwing like busy punches to the body. I don't think Bryce Mitchell realized he was out when he slammed him, because it like immediately after he starts punching the body, and Kron Gracie like had his hands like on him to collar tie, and they're just up in the air stiff. Like there's no resistance in that because he gets out and is able to posture up like nothing and land some shots after, and like those just put him in that neck. He was in Crone Gracie when he landed was unconscious in our dimension. Then those elbows landed and it was like no, you're in another dimension unconscious now. Like it was kind of brutal, but that's probably my number 2 of the year too. But that could always be recency bias as well, because it just happened. But I'm a big sucker for slam KOs. I blame Rampage putting a Rona through the mat years ago, and he headbutted him on that KO too. So it's funny.
One of my most watched videos was the biggest slam knockout.
Oh man, our girl Sarah Kaufman has like one of the best ever.
Yes.
On one of our girls, Roxy.
I believe Kaufman's last ever knockout finish. Because she had a bit of a reputation of being a bit of a decisionator, unfortunately, Sarah.
Yeah, which is like she was far from that. As much as she was a decision fighter,
she was good.
Sadly,
Sarah Kaufman was good.
Agreed. And sadly, most women's MMA fighters are. Like I hate to be that guy, but like, I know of 2 people that have made a lot of money, betting on those websites that every women's fight on a card will go to the same. I know 2 people. One person I don't know personally.
Is one of them Jack Slack?
Let's just say they're, yes. And and sites no longer allow you to do that because you make too much money. Apparently, you can make a lot of money that way. I had a friend of mine do it for 2 cards, and he was like, "Yeah, so I made $400." I was like, "What?" Like, and he was like, "Yeah, because I got a bonus for being right on all the cards I bet on." I was like, "And I bet on more than 3." And I'm like, "This is insane. Is this a money glitch?" But
I think we're going to need to talk about the winner here, though. 71.4% of the vote went to this fight. We're going back to April, UFC 300, Max Holloway versus Justin Gaethje.
What a fight, what a card, what a KO.
So what was your initial reaction when you saw that one?
I was stunned. I haven't been in that much. So you remember that part in The Sopranos where Junior is talking about Richie Aprile couldn't sell it to the other capos, and he goes, who am I better off with? Tony. I'm gonna go with Tony. And Bobby Bacala just sitting there like, what's that smirk on your face? What's going on? I'm in awe of you. Junior. That was kind of my vibe. Is like my jaw was like, and Holloway looked at me. He's like, "Hey man, what are you looking at me for?" I'm in awe of you, Max. Like I'm in awe of you. Because it's not like out of context. That's a really, really good KO. In context, that's a contender for moment of the year, because for me, when I think of a knockout, I think of the shot that lands it and whatever happens afterward until the ref pulls them off. That's the knockout, is that, right, for me, in my head, how my brain, what's the knockout? This one I make an exception because I count the 10 seconds where they're throwing hands. Before that, in the middle of the cage, Max Holloway, best chin at the time, the unbreakable chin in MMA, taking on Justin Gaethje, the hardest hitter in that division ever, probably. And they're just walloping each other back and forth. What a way and Max, not known for his punching power, puts it on a very durable Justin Gaethje. Hits him so hard, he's unconscious, and as he's falling, knees himself in the face. Because his lower half of his body wasn't unconscious yet. He shut the brain off so hard, the rest of the body couldn't catch up, and he kneed himself in the face. It is, it is just insane. Like I think that's got to be the second best one punch KO ever. You know, number one is of course the punch from 1776, Dan Henderson on Michael Bisping. That's how I refer it to now.
Hey, just remember 2016. 2016.
Well,
my boy got his revenge.
Well,
against a
America was
46-year-old
old at the
Dan
time.
Henderson and barely.
Yeah, you know, it was 3 rounds to 2, and I was a little tipsy and I cried after when Dan Henderson retired. I remember being drunk in the corner of a sports bar crying as my friends are laughing at me trying to cheer me up.
Like, the one thing I will say is, like, I remember watching that card. Like, it was like near the start of my MMA fandom. So I did have a couple of friends over. We watched it on like the Sunday morning. And one thing I will say, you know, is yes, Henderson was in the UK. Yes, he was getting booed. But it was almost in a sort of panto boos way. And when he did announce his retirement, the fans were grateful. They recognised what a legend he was.
Absolutely.
It was all for sure.
Arguably most accomplished fighter ever.
Well, you're certainly going to get your teeth into that when we do the retro review on February. So a little bit of a spoiler alert there.
Was this your pick too?
It was my pick as well. Holloway versus Gaethje. Because I think as well you need to add the occasion. UFC 300, big marquee show, and increase pressure on both fighters to deliver. Because there was a lot of people thinking that this fight on paper could be so amazing. There was an argument it should headline the card.
I mean, I think it should have. That was my main event, as far as I'm concerned.
And also,
nothing against those 4 fighters that went after it. There's zero disrespect to them. UFC 300, like those 000 cards, those centennial cards, as it were, if you want to refer to them as that way. To me, those are the only cards where you can go, yeah, I'm okay with having something dumb in the main event over what should be, you know? Like, that's the one time where I'm willing to forego meritocracy in match order.
Because you kind of saw that when they did Whaley versus Yarn. Because listen to the crowd for Holloway versus Gaethje and then compare it to the co-main. The crowd are just exhausted. There was hardly any atmosphere for that fight.
Yeah, it was sadly, that's like, in that moment, you kind of put it in the dead zone, or in the dead spot, you know, the bathroom break kind of moment. It's like you have to kind of take that like breather.
It's kind of like where they would do like some kind of Hell in a Cell match, like big violent all action brawl, and then they would have like the Stooges doing some comedy match with the Posse or something like that.
Yeah, 100%. Or I always think of poor Chris Jericho and poor Kevin Owens having to, you know, follow up on that awesome Brock and Goldberg match, and then it's like they're in between. It's like that. If that happens, and then here comes Jericho, Kevin Owens, which is a good match. The crowd's just tired, and then like, well, what's the main event? The worst Mania main event, like that I can think of at the top of my head. It's like Undertaker, Roman Reigns, a big dog with a big dog coming in with a big dog.
And I think another factor as well, before we move on to the next topic, one thing that stands out for me is, go back and watch that fight. Max Holloway is on his way to a comfortable 4-1 decision. And yet he's willing to risk it, put it on the line. He points to the floor and just goes stand and trade. He could have very easily lost that fight. So for him to go to this sort of trademark move, because he did it against, I think, Lamas, which is like the first time he did it.
199.
And to actually get the finish doing it like that, it just added that sort of cherry on top of the cake. Because I think the fight itself was good. Don't get me wrong.
It's a really good fight, I think.
But that knockout elevated it to this sort of iconic status.
Mm-hmm. It was fight of the night, 100%.
Yes.
Like, we knew before that moment. Like, you're like, oh, this is fight of the night. This fight's amazing. This is a great fight. And then that happens. And you go, oh. Like, man, against Gaethje, he does that. 4-1. You know, like, that's...
And a weight class up.
Oh, my gosh. It is... The more I think about it mentally, I just go, like, gosh, like, that's... It's got to be number 2 punch KO ever. for me. I think like the only other ones that I go, oh, like I have 2 Fedor ones probably in that top 5, but I go like, oh no, that one's better. I love Arlovsky, but him getting sniper rifled in the air, mid-air by Fedor is kind of nuts because it's a perfect punch while he's in the air. It just clobbers him. And I love the Brett Rogers KO, personally.
So we're going to move on to our next topic here, which is our UFC Newcomer of the Year. Now, this is exclusively for fighters who made their debut inside the octagon in 2024. Now, this turned into a bit of a 2-horse race. We'll talk about those 2 candidates in a lot more detail later on. In terms of some of the other fighters who made their bow over the past 12 months, looking at the shortlist, a big year for the fight nerds.
Fight nerds were, if I could just say, like, and cheat and be like, fight nerds is my vote, I would have done it. Because they were the 100% the newcomers this year, I thought. Jean Silva, definitely up there for me. Rufy, up there for me. Even if like a lot of people were like, oh, his last fight wasn't as impressive. I thought it was really good.
I think if Rufy had done a lot better against Lontop, he would have done a lot better with Paul.
Oh, yeah. Carlos Prates was my vote, since I have to pick one. I jokingly have said, can we make it Diego Lopez again because of how crazy his year was? But, Kayla Harrison, nothing against her. For me, it was just a fight nerds. For me, it was all fight nerds. Kayla Harrison, like, unbelievable debut this year.
Well, it did come down to
finishing Holly Holm.
It did come down to Prates versus Kayla here, and it depends on what you look for in terms of a great year. Because with Prates, you had a fighter fighting more frequently, arguably against lower level competition, but getting the finishes, which of course culminates in him just steamrolling Magny. Which, if you do know your MMA, if you beat Neil Magny, you're always somebody should keep an eye out for. And you compare that to Kayla, who had bigger matches, arguably with more stakes on them, still managed to get the wins, maybe didn't do so in as impressive a fashion as Prates. So it's what you value more. Is it the bigger wins or the more frequent wins?
Yeah. I mean, that first Kayla fight is very impressive, hauntingly impressive. She gets to batter a friend of the channel. Kidding.
You've turned Holly Holm into a verb.
It's awesome.
I have actually seen people, whenever they talk about Walden Stall, they refer it as Holly Holming.
They do it in our comments, and it's great. And it's like, if I swear, if I hear anyone on MMA On Point say Holly Holming and attempt to take credit for it, I'll be in the parking lot. That's mine. No, I'm playing. Yeah, it's so funny. I was like, please don't. I remember looking at 300 going, this is the only fight that has a chance of being bad. And shockingly, it wasn't the one fight on the card that wasn't very good. Blew my mind. And yeah, that I'm so happy to see her finish Holly Holm, as bad as it sounds. And then
the Ketlin fight was a lot more competitive than people thought. Like I've always said, Ketlin Vieira is incredibly underrated.
Oh yeah, and that fight to me kind of cemented her as like cool. I admittingly like seeing someone struggle for me to like really get behind him even more. So like I know a lot of people were like, oh wow, Shavkat's stock really fell, and it's like no, I needed to see that. As a fan.
His stock didn't fall. Gary's rose. It made me realize how good Ian Gary is.
Yeah, it made me think. It made me go, okay, Shavkat. His stock's just as where it was, and it's still growing for me, right? I've seen him go 5 rounds. I needed to see him struggle there. I needed to see a one-legged Shavkat struggle. I needed to see Topuria get head kicked and knee in the face by Jai Herbert. I needed to see that as a, you know, um, I'm trying to think of like another like big guy. Like, there's things like that because I don't want to just be so into the hype that it kind of kills it, you know. And so that's just me. And so for Kayla Harrison, I needed to see her have a massive cut from a Ketlin Vieira elbow and win a fight still. I needed to see that. Even though I've seen her lose before to Vanchenko, it was still big for me.
Who do you think won this one then, Prates or Kayla?
I voted for Prates. I have a distinct feeling Kayla Harrison won, but because of the name value on her wins. But four fights, four KOs.
Well, the winner of this was Kayla Harrison, 50% of the vote. Prates finishing in second. So, Kayla Harrison, she is our UFC newcomer of the year. Could she also as well be the female fighter of the year? Stay tuned to find out. While we wait for that though, we're going to be moving on to our next topic here, and we are looking at one of the most competitive of the titles. It is the upset of the year. So now this goes to a fight result, whether it was in the UFC or outside, that really took a lot of people by surprise. It might have been a big title fight upset. It may be something which was a big upset in terms of the bookmakers' odds. A really open field for this one here, Joe. Before we talk about the winner, what stood out for you in terms of the nominees?
Rug versus Anatoly. Well, how do you say his last
name?
Malakin. That one makes me laugh because I love the memes of Rug versus Francis for King of Africa. Next,
you know what that fight would be? That would kind of be sort of like this generation's version of Fedor Zulazinho.
Yeah, I think so too.
Like the heavyweight legend outcasted from the UFC, taking on just a big dude.
It's really funny. Rug cracks me up. Because he is just massive and isn't good.
It does kind of highlight, as much as I got sort of humour from that fight and seeing the result, it does kind of highlight the weaknesses of one's MMA division.
Oh, yeah. He has the record for most wins in their heavyweight division. I didn't know that. That's pretty awesome. He's not 265. That's insane. I thought he was 265. But I do know that he was their folk wrestling style of Senegal. But incredibly funny to me that people were like, it has to happen. Ngannou versus Rug, winner fights DDP. And I'm like, that's so funny.
Do you think we should do a Limp Bizkit promo for it?
Oh my gosh. With like DDP being the Vince McMahon?
In the interest of fairness. Who would be Deborah?
One.
Laura Sanko?
Tough luck. Cyril gone.
Let's just take Cyril out of the equation. Bam, he non-factor.
Bam, non-factor. I'm in Zahavi because I'm a big Zahavi fan. So of the brother Farah variety. So I'm in Zahavi one. Jared Basharad one's pretty good for me. Gabriela Fernandez versus Wayne Kong, was that the biggest odds makers one this year?
This year, yes, definitely. That actually got my vote. Because not only did you have the equation of like the bookmakers odds, people forget Wang Kong came into this fight with a ton of hype. Like there were people saying that she should get the Pereira treatment and just be fast tracked to face Chev, which I was thinking, look, she's talented and she's got the hype train behind her, but there was a lot of people getting a bit too carried away off beating Victoria Leonardo, who, whether she was worthy of being in the UFC, I call that into question. And I think when you have somebody who has the hype train, which is so extreme, like that. Part of you does kind of want to see it derailed. You sort of like, what's the old saying? I thrive on chaos, something like that.
Oh yeah.
And if you,
Ironic, because she came in the Joker makeup, and some people, me being one of them, just want to watch the world burn, as Michael Caine said in The Dark Knight.
and that factored into it as well. Like, there was the makeup, there was the trash talk she was giving Gabby going into the fight. And if you go back and you watch that fight, like, Kong's winning. Kong is winning the first round, winning the majority of the second round. But she is showing no respect to the striking ability of Gabby. So the head kick lands, and whether it was her continuing that disrespect or her being a little bit out of it, she just stays in the pocket. Gabby lands that big punch, uses it to drop her, take the back, and get the finish. Now, like, Kong could very easily build up that hype train. Like, I'm fairly certain the UFC are going to give her an easier opponent, and everyone's going to jump back on it. But that really did hurt her stock. And I was happy for Gabby, for her to get that win, and I think it just highlighted to people, don't count your chickens before they're hatched. A lot of the time, a lot of the fighters I do have issues with are the people where the hype train is getting a bit too carried away for its own good, and I just want to say, hey, pump the brakes. And this was one of those situations.
It's always when that happens and the fighter tries to ride that high in like a negative way. For me, that's always my, like, what's his face? Oh, Ian Gary, because he was saying that he won against Shah Khan.
He did well. Ian Gary fought very well, but he didn't win that fight.
Yeah, he won a round, which is more than I've seen anyone do against Shah Khan. That was I had it 4-1, I think. Could be crazy. I have to go back and watch the video. But watch my own recap, because I haven't watched that fight since, admittingly. But yeah, this one is the one I voted for too. I wanted to vote for Rugrug, but I thought I feel like I'm memeing even here. As much of a meme win as that is, felt like I was memeing voting for it.
Well, there was a lot of people that felt that way because Rugrug versus Anatoly Malikin was our upset of the year.
Hilarious. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah, 28.5% of the vote. So a lot of votes spread out over a very wide field. So it only took a few votes to actually win this one. But yeah, Rugrug got the vote over Gabby versus Kong.
I'm sure he's happy to win this one.
I would be concerned if someone like Rugrug decides, you know what, I'm going to spend my New Year's Day watching these two idiots blithering on about MMA.
He's a big dude.
Any opinions as well on some of the written-in requests? Because we had one person nominated Neil Magny versus Mike Malott, and another with Buckley versus Wonderboy.
I don't think Buckley Wonderboy was an upset necessarily.
Wasn't Buckley the favourite?
He might have been. Well, for me, I look at it this way. It's like Buckley, especially in hindsight is 2020. They've been giving him a lot of past their prime welterweights, and it kind of makes sense that I was like, Wonderboy is either going to get a decision or Buckley's going to crack him. And the latter happened. So I don't necessarily think that was an upset. The Mike Malott, Neil Magny one is like, absolutely. That one's up there for me. That might have been my number 2 pick that was here. And I might have even picked it, honestly, but because I gave, if we had a comeback of the year, that one probably would have been number 1 for me.
Yeah. Because, I mean, he was getting hammered in those first 2 rounds, Magny.
Oh, yeah. The crowd was all Mike Malott. It turns out walking the sum 41 is horrible on your cardio. I do think that is a fun gimmick. Well, like, yeah, I'm just a fun Canadian, you know? And then it's like, what are you walking out to? I don't want to waste my time. Another casualty. It's so funny.
Which is why, if I ever became an MMA fighter, I'm walking out to Enya. Okay.
I'm going to walk out to a different song every time, but for my debut, I'll walk out to I Have It Here. I thought it's yesterday, and I was giggling to myself. Can't Get You Out of My Head by Kylie Minogue or whatever.
Decent song, good pop song.
Yeah, it's a decent little pop song. It's a song that will randomly get in my head when I'm showering, and I went, I guess I gotta throw this on my Spotify.
It feels like something tied to Uvasa would walk out to.
It does, actually. Yeah. You know what song we would never walk out to? That horrible Madonna Bond song.
Oh, that's awful. That is so bad. That's my least favourite Bond song.
Yeah, it's the worst Bond song.
Yeah. Best one for me is You Know My Name, Cornell.
With, yeah, that's the best one. Best Bond song. I don't think it's close.
It's a good thing that we did mention Rug Rug versus Malakin because it was a handwritten request for our next category here, the worst fight of the year. Now, as with the previous poll, this one was a bit of a two-horse race. Before we talk about those fights, though, we'll talk about some of the other nominees which were put forward. Martin Budai and Andrei Arlovsky, UFC 303, which sort of kind of encapsulates the sort of late career Arlovsky run, which unfortunately also ended up being his last fight. Vitor Petrino versus Tyson Pedro also turned out to be a bit of a stinker. And we also had one which was written in here, another handwritten request here. A Mr. J. Neal from Oklahoma nominated Valentina Shevchenko versus Alexa Grasso.
So that won, right? I don't have a horse in this race.
Not a good fight. I know it's a bit of a meme with ourselves because I know you're not really the big Chev fan. We know you love Alexa Grasso. Not a good fight.
Admittingly, if it was fighter A and fighter B, or if Alexa Grasso was the one laying and praying and doing nothing while Valentina attacked from her back ineffectually for 5 rounds, I would be like, well, me and Alexa are going to talk about how bad that fight was later. Like, that would be like the joke, I would say, right? So it isn't like a Chev thing or a Grasso thing for why that fight's bad. That fight's just bad. And I don't think anyone on either side of the fandom should defend that fight. Because what hurts even more is that's my favorite card of the year. And that's probably my least favorite fight this year. Because of context added into. Then...
and the second fight was so good as well.
Amazing. Yeah, the first one's the best one. But the second one is pretty good too. The 10-7 round of Grasso was pretty awesome. I can't look at the camera when I say things like that because I'll just break.
I will say like that. I know that fight and that card. It sticks in my mind as well because obviously because of the time difference, I'm not able to watch the cards live. So I tape and watch them first thing in the morning, try and avoid the spoilers. But I remember that one because I saw a note you sent me, which was along the lines of, this card was great until John Fitch showed up. And I knew it couldn't be Merab versus O'Malley, because you'd be happy with Merab, Leighton Prey and Sean. So I knew it was the co-main, and I knew that Chev wins by going wrestling heavy.
That's really funny to me. I remember you told me this story before, and I think that's so funny that's how it got spoiled for you. I thought I waited enough time that you'd be awake still when I sent that. That's so funny to me.
This did turn into a 2-horse race, though. So our nominees, our silver medalist and our gold medalist, it's either going to be one of these two. Bo Nickel versus Paul Craig, UFC 309, and Muhammad Makaya versus Manel Kape, UFC 304. So way up
I'm admittingly kind of shocked by that Paul Craig Bo Nickel one being this high.
So why do you think both are so regarded as negative?
Because Bo Nickel's annoying. You know? Like, he has a lot of hype on him, right? And he's kind of annoying. I say that as someone who is a fan of what he does in the cage. This fight wasn't good. I'm not going to say it's
but
a
it
good
wasn't
fight.
offensively bad either.
No, it was like, oh, why are you on the main card? This isn't a good fight.
Do you know what it was?
Matchmaking sucks.
It was a less funny Ben Askren versus Damian Maia.
Yeah. I mean, like, because it was like Bo Nickel just throwing like left overhand after left overhand, and Paul Craig is not a striker. You know what I mean?
There's this website that does fighter breakdowns for some of the main events, and they talk about some of like the quirks, the traits that they have. And they did one on Paul Craig before his main event against Brendan Allen. And for the striking section, all they wrote was, Paul Craig is not a striker.
It's so funny. You remember how back in the day, they still do it now, but now it's like DC's tips to victory. And they're not as much fun. But they used to have like the generic, like Forrest Griffin would walk out. He used to always say, tons of heart on it. I have a cousin named Little Vince, and he used to always crack me up because we used to always laugh because he would always get like a little annoyed for Forrest Griffin how it would say tons of heart, and he's like, tons of heart, what is that supposed to be? What are they gonna do next? GSP walks out, loves rainbows, like what is this?
My favorite one was Belfort, known weakness.
Yeah, that's my favorite ever. That one's so good.
And in terms of Micaiah versus Cap,
it's gotta win. If that doesn't win, I'll be stunned.
Because I think the fight itself didn't deliver. Obviously, it got a lot of beats from the crowd, but it also as well, there was a lot of people hyping that fight up because these guys were like trying to fight each other at the weigh-ins. They were trying to fight each other before the match. So you're thinking, oh God, these two are going to have an absolute war. And instead we just get this really nervous point fight. It's like that meme of the two dogs when they have the fence between themselves and they're both growling at each other and they move the fence away and they just like sniff around each other.
Yep. Makes me think of Joe Rogan talking about how boxing is weird if we take it as like the prime combat sport. It's like, I hate you too. Like we should fight each other, but let's only use our fists. That fight's clear for me, like number one. In terms of like offensively bad fights, there's been more offensively bad matchmaking that makes me not care about a fight. A lot of that this year, but the two offensively bad fights was like Muhammad Mokaev, Manel Kape, and Martin Buday, Andrei Arlovsky. I will say this though, unironically, if Andrei Arlovsky would have won that fight by decision, I probably would have liked it a little bit more because then I could be like, see, he's going to keep doing this till he's 80. Decisioning random heavyweights.
He probably will in the GFL. Like Arlovsky fighting for the GFL is right up their street.
That's true. If you think if they would have fought in the Apex, Arlovsky gets the decision win.
True.
Just saying.
I will say, I've already designed the thumbnail for the GFL already because I just know that's not going to work.
It's going to be hilarious. But for the Mokaev one is like, I'm sure we'll talk about him in detail when it comes to dumbass of the year.
You don't have to wait too long for that one, Joe. It's coming up next.
Oh, excellent. That's my favorite award.
But the winner of this poll,
really bad.
The winner of this poll, 50% of the vote, it is Mokaev versus Manel Kape, UFC 304.
It's a landslide. That's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, it's the worst fight of the year.
So now we move.
It's really bad.
Now we move on to. You sort of did a little bit of a spoiler alert there. The one that everybody seems to love. It is the dumbass of the year. Now, this is somebody who over the past 12 months who did something so unbelievably stupid that it ended up crashing their stock or any goodwill that they had. Now, this one turned into a 3-horse race. We'll get to those 3 in just a little bit earlier on. I've got a list here of some of the shortlisted options that were nominated by the public, some of the ones that we put forward as well. Tim Welch and Colby Covington, they both got written in nominations. One which was put forward by you, which was the UFC Matchmakers. And one which I personally vouch for. This one got my vote. And I'll probably do a video about it at some point in 2025. The UFC and their new glove manufacturers. And the big PR disaster that was.
Horrid gloves. You know my favorite part about that? Is those gloves were designed for less eye pokes. And they just happened to like go, you know what, maybe these weren't the best idea. Right before a John Jones pay-per-view.
It does seem very convenient as well that they switched back to the old gloves when John Jones said he didn't like them.
Yeah. I don't like them. They block my fingers. Me just...
But I mean, like, the PR disaster, man, this is like new Coke.
Horrible. Yeah. That's a great analogy. It really is like New Coke. It's horrible. Horrible gloves made by horrible manufacturers. They should all be ashamed of themselves. Hot take. They should be ashamed.
Yes.
Matchmakers was one I personally was like, well, I mean, yeah. Like, it's pretty bad.
What in particular with the matchmaking bothered you?
I mean, Ankalaev not getting a title fight. Title fight matchmaking in general has been pretty bad. I know a lot of it is because we have so many cards, because ESPN probably has like that deal. Like we all theorize that ESPN has a deal of like, what's it called? We want X amount of cards this year to show off. And, the UFC is like, yes, we can do this. We can do that. Yeah. And a lot of that is, like that means we're going to get a lot of more Apex filler cards. So here comes like a lot of card fights that just do not matter and that are not going to be great. So it's like, cool. Here's me doing my 58th recap. There's 52 weeks in a year, Joe. My 58th recap of the year for another Apex card. If you would, this is funny. I made this joke the other day. They were asking, I was like, is there any bad parts about working on YouTube? And I was like, yeah, the only thing bad about it is I have to watch Apex cards. And they're not a fight fan, so they didn't understand what I meant by that. I said, I have to watch them. They went. It's like, don't worry about it. Anyways. So,
I think the approach the UFC have taken, which I think there has been a definite difference in how the UFC approaches, especially the title fights, is the UFC used to be a lot more merit-based than it was now. And if the UFC identified, okay, fighter X is the number one contender, we're going to wait until fighter Y is ready, and then we're going to definitely do that title match. Because I remember Robbie Lawler versus Carlos Condit. That was supposed to happen near the back end of 2015. Lawler wasn't ready. So instead, they pushed that fight back until 2016, UFC 195. So they waited to 2 months because they recognized, hey, Carlos Condit is the number one contender. We want to do that fight. And it turned out fantastic. It's one of the best fights of all time. These days, the UFC would go, no, Robbie Lawler is fighting on that date regardless of who the opponent is.
It's like we signed in a guy, an import from one to take on Robbie Lawler for this. Rug versus Robbie Lawler. Oh no.
Rug would need to cut off a leg to get down to 170.
Yeah, he's about 100 pounds too big. He is a big dude. But excuse me. Had something in my eye. Now my eyes are watering. But
we do have a 3-horse race for our dumbass of the year. So here are the nominees, our first, second, and third places. Which one of it is the winner? So we've got Muhammad Mokaev for being the UFC's number one contender in the flyweight division, unbeaten, and getting himself axed by the promotion because of his behaviour behind the scenes and in general being a bit of a douche. Jamal Hill for his reaction post Alex Pereira, aggravating a lot of fans on social media, getting into arguments and Twitter wars with a lot of fans. And Don Davis for his handling of the former Bellator fighters and being an MMA executive who admitted he doesn't watch MMA.
That last bit is hilarious. Like, mishandling the Bellator fighters, I'm not trying to defend him, but I think that would overwhelm me in that position. You have a team around you, though. So he had some help with it, but still, it's pretty tough, I would imagine. The last part is hilarious, though. Like, I do not think Dana White, if Dana White watches the sport, I'm trying to find a way to describe, because here's how I want to say it. There's two types of fans in any type of entertainment. You know, you have the fan who enjoys the fine dining of art. You know, uh, like if you ask a movie fan, like, what's your favorite film of all time? And it's like, oh, as much as I love Godfather 1, I love Godfather 2 a little bit more. I think the cinematography when they're in old Italy is amazing. In Bruges is one of the best films ever. Breaking Away, 19 set in the 70s, Breaking Away. I love cycling, and that movie really spoke to me. Its use of classical music's incredible. And you have the other side, and there's nothing wrong with either side. You have the other side that's like, yeah, probably Endgame. Uh, I mean, like, because it was really cool seeing all the toys smash each other, and it's like, okay, nothing wrong with that. I think Dana White he is a fast food over fine dining of MMA. He much prefers to see um, the MMA equivalent of Power Slap than he would prefer to see the MMA equivalent of a chess match. Like one of the famous fights in recent memory that's a chess match that is one of my favorites ever is like Corey Sandhagen and Piotr Jan. Love that
Great
fight.
fight.
It's one of my favorite fights of all time. I'm sure he enjoyed that fight. I'm sure he enjoyed. I'm sure he still watches Forrest Stephan Bonner and goes, "Well, that's a better fight. They just stand in the middle and throw punches." And it's like, sure. I prefer a Jose Aldo, Frankie Edgar, Piotr Jan, Corey Sandhagen type of fight. And there's nothing wrong with liking one or the other. I just think he's much more of that style, a fan. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, I think you can be any kind of fan of the sport as long as you're watching it. You're a good fan for me. Don Davis is not a fan of the sport.
He's a businessman.
Yeah, which is not. Don't admit that. Lie.
I remember, just going off on a tangent here, there was an episode of Top Gear, and it just come out, like, there'd been a report from the new head of the BBC, and he said he doesn't watch TV all that much. So Clarkson starts going around in the studio flipping the bird to all the cameras. That's kind of what the feeling I got when Don Davis said that.
That's actually really funny and apt. What a show Top Gear is, God.
In terms of some of the other nominees, like Mikhaev, kind of self-explanatory. Jamal Hill, I kind of feel like that's people saying I don't like Jamal Hill. And deep down, this is one of my hotter takes. Like, Jamal Hill is a shoot heel, and a lot of the sort of delusions that he have are genuine. But I definitely get the feeling these past few months he's leaned into it, and it's playing a bit of a shtick now.
I think he just woke up, personally. I know that's like the meme, is like, he must still be sleeping, I think he's definitely like, we've talked about this kind of mindset a lot on here, about the mindset of, like, if you're trying to be a champion and you want to be the best, you have to have that, like, really big ego. You gotta have to have a level of confidence that is not normal. Some fighters, whenever that dream kind of comes crashing down, some fighters pick up the pieces. Some fighters crumble under the pressure of trying to do that, and they kind of have like a small breakdown. Jamal Hill has found a third way. Pretend it didn't happen. Like, it's very Sean O'Malley, I'm unbeaten, after getting KO'd by Cheeto Vera.
But
to me,
dare I say, though, it's kind of working for Jamal, because, like, Jamal versus Yuri is going to be happening in a month's time. And that fight, fair enough, decent enough, high-ranked fight, light heavyweight division. There's a lot more interest in that fight than there was a few months ago, even if it is people wanting Jamal to lose.
Yeah, 100%. That's a real thing.
He's leaned into the heel role. Now, I will eventually get sick of it, but I do kind of understand why Jamal's doing it.
I think poking the bear is a horrible idea. Going to see where Paid is training at the PI and just walking up to him, and then the second Vegeta like says, "Hey, there's some gloves there if you think you're a man." No, and like walks away. Like that was pretty funny to me. I I think that's like his big mistake is like he's actively poking a bear. Because I am of the belief that, oh, you're striking with Vegeta, you've lost.
Yeah.
Like, why?
I mean, the guy got
Like,
taken
why
down by
strike him?
Dylan Dennis. Take him down.
Double leg him. Like, just double leg him. And I understand the whole thing of you have to get in the range. You have, like, it's not as simple as it sounds. You're 110% correct. It is not as simple as it sounds. But it is as simple as it sounds to train for that style.
Like,
Just take him down.
like if we can get heavyweights, like heavyweight is like the worst division in the UFC, of the men's division. It's the worst.
Yeah.
But if you can get unranked heavyweights who are smart enough to take down Rebellis to Spain, surely you can get 205ers to do the same thing to Pereira.
Oh, yeah. I don't understand this. Could you imagine? Nikita Krylov goes in there. They give him that fight. Nikita Krylov just double legs him for 5 rounds. Like, could you imagine the level of angry Dana face?
I imagine the crowd. The crowd would just be...
Oh, yeah. The crowd would be mad.
Unless we get that full on... Do you remember Kimbo versus James Thompson? Like, any time Thompson got the takedown, they just immediately stood them back up.
It's a poorly refereed fight. Very poorly refereed fight.
Who do you think's won this one then? Makayev, Hill, or Davis?
Makayev. He's probably ran away with it. He's the clear one. He asked Manel Cape if he wanted to take a picture and bury the hatchet. Manel Cape's like, okay, I could be an adult. And as soon as he pulled out the camera, Makayev whispered in his ear, you can be an adult, but I can't, and went to hit him. I'm adding the dialogue. That probably didn't happen, but I'm adding. That's probably what happened. And then tells everybody, yeah, the UFC told me that if I didn't strike with them, they're cutting me anyways. And it's like,
I honestly think that's...
Why would you admit that?
I honestly think that's a big factor in Makayev getting axed. Because he's kind of done the whole Petrozelli Kimbo thing.
Mm-hmm. That's effing illegal. Dana White looking in the mirror as he says that.
And you could also make the argument as well that obviously we saw recently with Pantoja, he fought Kaya Sakura in his title fight. Mm-hmm. Muhammad Makayev was going to fight for that belt.
That would have been him.
Yeah, and I think he could have won.
He could have, yeah. I would have picked Pantoja to win, but I think Makayev could have won.
I would have picked Makayev to win.
Yeah. I feel like I've just learned to not pick against Pantoja.
He has really gone up in my estimations because I was kind of like, people started getting a little bit carried away with him because, like, he's very good, don't get me wrong. But I did feel like he was, like, just getting through some of these fights.
Yeah, the Royval one.
Yeah. And then facing a lot of adversity against Steve Erceg and still coming through to win that fight. And then just steamrolling through Asakura. He's definitely... Would you go as far as to call him number 2 flyweight?
Yeah. All time? No, I don't know about that yet. That's
Mighty Mouse is number 1. You can make an argument Pantoja is number 2.
I think the argument is 100% there. I'm not quite ready to settle down on that yet. 2, 3, and 4 are for me are like still up in the air because the division's finally gotten like good enough to add more than one name.
Because you're like Benavidez, Figgy, Brandon Moreno, like they all have an argument for number 2, along with Pantoja.
Cejudo has one. I think he's the number. When I said number 2, when you said number 2, and that's why I said yes. I thought you were saying number 2 pound for pound. No. I was like, oh yeah, absolutely. He's absolutely number 2 pound for pound for me right now. I have Topuria at number 1, best pound for pound guy on the planet right now, and then number 1 is Pantoja.
I've got Topuria number 1, Pantoja 2.
Oh yeah, same here. Yeah. So.
The winner of this poll, though, there was a number 1, and it is 28.5% of the vote, so it was a very close vote.
Closer.
Muhammad Makayev is our Dumbass of the Year.
It was number 2.
It was tied. Jamal Hill and Don Davis.
Wow. Very close. Very close.
Yeah. So now, Joe, we're going to be moving on to celebrating the fairer sex and probably isolating a lot of our viewers in the process. It is time for us to talk about the Female Fighter of the Year. This one in particular, especially from a UFC perspective, in my opinion, quite tough to pick a winner for, because I don't know about you. I feel like the attitude towards women's MMA from both the fan base and the UFC itself, it certainly isn't the novelty it once was in, say, Ronda's era.
Yeah.
Do you think that's a changing fan base, or do you think just the fights and the divisions themselves aren't capturing the imagination?
I think it's promotion, partially. I mean, I'll say this for me. I'm less interested in 135 with Julie as champion than I was with Rocky or Nunes in our prime. Funny enough. Like,
those glorious 9 months of the Pennington era were wonderful.
For me, it was like, oh, dream matchmaking sounds really fun right now. That was like kind of fun part of it for me. With Nunes, it was like, well, I do like seeing people get finished. Like, let's see Amanda knock someone out.
You were probably one of like 80,000 because they were like notoriously awful drawing pay-per-views.
Oh, they were horrible. I didn't say I paid for them. Yeah, it's funny. I think me and my best friend are like the two of the few true Nunes fans. Probably because she head kicked Holly Holm, and that's pretty awesome. That KO is awesome, but I was a Nunes fan before that. Her fight with Kat Zingano made me like go, oh, this chick's awesome. I love Kat Zingano. I'm glad she got the win, but Nunes did really good here. I'm going to keep watching for her.
This one came down to a bit of a 2-horse race as well, and interestingly, it wasn't any fighter in the UFC. Both were PFL fighters who dominated the poll this time. On 145, Chris Cyborg and Dakota Ditchever at 125. So we'll talk about both in a little bit more detail here, because I was talking to somebody online about this, and I just want your opinion. Okay. Could you make an argument that Larissa Pacheco is Cyborg's best win? Because, yes, I think that Chris has had higher profile fights, and she's fought people who were more talented than Pacheco. But bearing in mind she's 40 years old, physically declining, Pacheco being one of the few people who can match her power, and yet she was able to overcome all of that, fought a very intelligent, grappling-heavy match, and managed to do something extraordinary, like a 5th major title. And I know you don't personally agree with this one. I think you can make a strong claim for Chris to be the best ever. Like, yes,
she's one or two.
Women's 145, it's a bit of a meme division.
Yeah.
But to win the title, to be top dog in 2009, and 15 years later, still be top dog, with all of that tape and a body that's slowing down, that got to carry some weight.
It does. For me, she's at the lowest is 2. I disagree with her being 1, but I understand her being 1 for people. She's 2 at the lowest. I think the top 2 women's MMA is figured out, I think. It's just kind of a preference of who you believe is first.
And what you value more.
Yeah. I value one beating the other.
I value one not getting outboxed by Juliana Pena.
I have a really funny joke here, but I love my job.
Before we fall out, we'll talk about Dakota Ditchever, because
before we fall out,
we won't fall out. No,
we would never.
Yeah, it's very tongue in cheek.
We play that is funny. That caught me off guard. Before we fall out, I'm like, oh, that's good. Yeah, that's a good one.
But no, in my opinion, even though I hold Chris's achievements in very high regard, for me the standout was Dakota. Like, this was somebody who did have a little bit of fanfare, and those who knew hyped her up very substantially. Like, I was calling her like British Joanna and saying like, this girl is very good. I don't think anybody expected her to be as good as what she was. And to do it the way she did in Saudi Arabia, she fought Tyler Santos, who I personally hold in a very high regard. In my opinion, still one of the top 5 flyweights in the world. And she just absolutely steamrolled her.
I did not expect her to beat Talia Santos, admittingly. I
had it down to win, but I didn't expect it to be as dominant as it was.
And the way she did it too, like, very much, because she fought 3 times 3 KOs this year. You know what's crazy? All body shots.
Her body work is wonderful, and I think now the PFL seem to be moving away from, because obviously because of the tournament format, they were a little bit sketchy about throwing elbows. Now she's got those elbows back. That's another weapon to add. She is British Ioana.
Yeah. Man, Ioana has one of my favorite finishes ever in women's MMA. It's just 2 of them. Her finish of poor girl, Carla Esparza, is brutal.
Is that the one where they were doing like the Skittles meme? Because Carla had like the rainbow coloured beads in her hair, and someone photoshopped it so like the beads are flying all over the place.
That's funny. Funny we bring that up because I remember Cyborg kneeing Jan Finney in the body so hard that, or hitting Jan Finney so hard it knocked the her hair tie out into the crowd. Like, that's a thing that happened. It's a crazy one. Man, Cyborg and Strikeforce was insane. But I did not expect her to dominate Talia Santos like that. Like, Talia Santos, top 5 in the UFC at 125. Easily. Took the champ to a very close fight that I scored for Talia Santos. But we've all talked about that. Yeah, we've talked about that one a ton, of why I scored that way, and even I've admitted potential bias there because I didn't score it for Pantoja, and Pantoja held the back in back position. So, yeah, the more for me, Chris Cyborg, one fight this year, then beating up YouTubers and influencer boxing. You got to make that money. I get it. But it's probably Dakota for Fighter of the Year. Kayla Harrison doesn't have a belt. Rocky should have a belt, but 2-0 this year.
Someone did vote for Rocky.
Probably me, admittingly, because I knew I was going to make a Rousey joke here, and I think that I remember it was me. It was me voting for Rocky because I was like, I'm going to make a Rousey joke here. I need to cushion it. Carl, calm down. See, I voted for Rocky. No, I did vote for Rocky because I will admit, when we made the poll, I was thinking I was all Rocky. I was like, it's probably Rocky. I thought Dakota only fought twice this year. I did not know she fought a 3rd time this year. And that little bit was enough to tip it over the edge for me.
Well, the public felt the same way, and the winner with 57% of the vote was Dakota Ditchever. Bit of a runaway winner on that one, it has to be said. I'm going to be very interested to see what happens with Dakota in 2025, because I've got the feeling that if the UFC... There's a lot of people putting forward this idea, and I just want your take on it. There's a lot of people speculating that the UFC might try and do a trade with the PFL to get Dakota on the roster.
I think send Jessica Andrade.
I could see it, actually. I could see it. Because I think from both the PFL and the UFC's perspective, with the PFL, they're getting a girl with a lot of star power, very exciting style. UFC, obviously, they're getting the better long-term potential, because I love Jessica Andrade. I think she should be a contender for Hall of Fame eventually.
First, yeah.
I'd argue she's maybe past her prime as an elite level 125er. Maybe a 115 she still can be, but people know how to beat Andrade now.
Yeah, people figured it out.
The other person I was thinking of, like, I can see the UFC. I can see the UFC going full on Rick from Pawn Stars with this one. They're probably going to offer like Gilton Almeida, someone like that.
That sounds really funny.
Because they know the PFL need heavyweights with star power. And the UFC really seem to dislike Gilton. The fan base aren't too keen on him either. So I think the UFC can maybe say, hey, you've got yourself your big marquee heavyweight for Francis. And we all know how powerful Teep Kick the double leg is. Gilton could win.
Best face.
He has more of a chance than Henan forever.
Oh, yeah. How funny would it be? There's no way this happens. How funny would it be if it's like John, like they're going, okay, Yelton for Dakota. I guess that's what we're going to do. John Jones kicks open the door and goes, offer Aspinall for Dakota.
Honestly, with the way that Dana White has been sort of brown-nosing John Jones and bending to his demands, you could honestly see it.
I sadly could.
That being said, I do genuinely believe that Dana does see the value in doing Aspinall now. It's just whether or not John Jones says, that doesn't work for me, brother.
I wonder how those pay-per-view buys did for John Jones. Because I was going for a boycott.
I think Meltzer said it's, based on his estimations, it was the most watched, like the most bought card of the year. But I do know there's a lot of people which Dave Meltzer isn't the reliable source that maybe he once was.
He has fallen from grace for me. I was once a very big Dave Meltzer fan. I thought he was very intelligent. And in multitude of sports, not just professional wrestling, but he has kind of fallen from grace with me. So...
None of these guys, though, fell from grace, though. It is time for us to talk about our male fighter of the year. So we'll leave the big two to last. We do have some of the other nominees which are put forward here. So do you have any opinions on some of these guys here? We've got a bit of a short list, some viewer-suggested ones, some of the ones we shortlisted as well. Before we get to the big two, though, nominees included Alexander Pantoja, Dricus du Plessis, Joaquin Buckley. Someone also wrote in and wrote John Jones, but I think that was John Jones's girlfriend who wrote that. No, it was actually a Mr. D. White from Vegas.
Oh yeah, Dean White, you say?
Yes.
Excellent. Yeah, I feel like Dana would probably type in Dana Blue.
Mr. Snrub.
Yeah. He'd put in Harvey Keitel. Harvey Keitel was Mr. White in Reservoir Dogs. No, that's just a coincidence. It can't be.
Did any of those guys, in your opinion, have an outside claim? Because
Pantoja did for me.
I did see a lot of people putting forward Joaquin Buckley simply through how active he was. It was kind of like, if you remember, I think it was like 2020. Kevin Holland had that year where he won 5 fights in a row in a calendar year. And there was a lot of people thinking, I'm going to value the sort of amount of wins more than I am who I've actually fought.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that year, 2020, Kevin Holland was my fighter of the year. I'll be the first to say. I mean, he had Vicente Luque, Nursultan Ruzaboev, Wonder Boy, and Colby Covington. Those are, I think that...
aging names.
Yeah, very aging names. With, Ruzaboev being the youngest of them with the least... No, actually, still a ton of fight mileage on him, honestly. With Kevin Holland, it was I think Kevin Holland kind of had a different... there was a different vibe with that because it was 2020 when no one was fighting.
But Holland did fight aging names as well. He fought Jacare. I will say, didn't he fight Fluffy? Didn't he be Fluffy? That one's aged very well.
It. And Joaquin Buckley. Funny enough. Because he has Fluffy Hernandez, Joaquin Buckley, Darren Stewart, Charlie Ontiveros, and Jacare at the air. And then he also tied the record for most wins in a calendar year with it. Yeah, 5 wins in a calendar year. That started in May for him. Whew. It's incredible because he fought May, August, September, then October, then December. Like he fought so much in 7 months. He fought 5 times, which is incredible. That to me is kind of what tips it over. Is like the full context of it. I don't think Buckley has that full context with me.
Where did you personally stand on the Colby fight? Because there seems to be 2 schools of thought, and I have to be honest, I can see both sides of the argument here. Because yes, that is not the same Colby Covington of, say, 2018, 2019. And I do stand on my belief. I'm not necessarily a Colby fan, but I do think he had an upside. And I think that sort of cardio, kickboxing, using the wrestling as well, it did work for him. And I think he was worthy of being in that sort of higher echelon of welterweights.
Yeah, high activity guy. Pre Leon Edwards, I thought he was even like kind of exciting at times. Yeah. He was never going to hurt you, but both Usman fights are very good, and it takes 2 to tango. So,
because I would say, like, I think a prime Colby could have beaten Joaquin Buckley.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Colby shouldn't be ranked nowadays. And neither should anyone Joaquin Buckley beat this year. Or KO'd this year, I should say.
But
Ruzi Boev could do it, but...
Buckley made that fight look easy. And I do think that is something to hold value in. Just how easy he made it.
Mm-hmm. Because didn't he walk out with Hulk Hogan and Chael Sonnen?
Yes.
It's hilarious. Colby should have been like, that doesn't work for me, brother, when the doctor... was like going, your eye is destroyed.
Maybe he was hoping that having Hogan's presence would kind of like rub off on him and it just would be like, no, I am definitely going to win this one because I've got Hogan with me and Hogan's politicking might help me out.
What if, as he's getting lit up and that eye is getting worse and worse, Colby just starts... How funny would that be? And then he gets head kicked. That'd be really fun. That would be so funny to me. I think DDP, the Strickland fight's really close. I scored it for Strickland the first time I watched it, and I haven't watched it since because I didn't like that fight. And him beating Adesanya is like a really good validation fight win for him. But there's something so funny about that fight that it's really hard to take seriously, and that's not fair to either fighter. Because I love the meme so much of Israel Adesanya. I've trained my whole life to master the art of striking. I am a technical masterclass and to show the true art and beauty of striking. Dricus du Plessis. Like, it's so funny. It's so funny to me. Dricus du Plessis fights like, you know, if Juliana Pena is the wine mom boxing, Dricus du Plessis is the beer dad boxing.
I actually did see Miesha Tate compare DDP and Pena's striking.
It's amazing. See, this is why me and her are perfect for each other. Sorry, Alexa. Yeah.
I think you need to have tax issues to have a chance with Miesha. If the story with Brian Caraway is true.
Oh, that's right. Oh, no. Never mind.
He's like one of the state's biggest tax dodgers, apparently.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I remember hearing about that. Still my favorite corner advice ever. Just coast.
Which is kind of the analogy for the Apex this year. Just coast.
Just coast. Just coast. Pantoja, for me, is probably... Is he number 2 for me this year? Or number 3? He's probably number 3 for me because Pereira is my number 2, even if the quality of his wins weren't as big.
That's the big thing that I think I personally hold against it, because going into this poll, I had this down as a 2-horse race, It was either going to be Topuria or Pereira. And I think what hurts Pereira in that argument between the two is I think that even though Topuria had less wins, the star power and the legacy of the two people he beat far outweighs that of Pereira. And I think as well, the stuff at Ankalaev, whether it's driven by Pereira himself or driven by the UFC, it does have an asterisk next to him. Because, like, let's say Pereira did fight Ankalaev at 307 and beat him. We're not having this conversation. Pereira's the number one.
Yeah.
But the fact that both seem to go out their way not to book that fight, it tars him for me.
Oh, yeah. I think of it this way. I think it's really bad matchmaking, and it's a really bad look for a company and a fighter when, as the champion, you're not fighting the number one contender.
I agree.
And like, because Pereira, what, it was 3 wins this year, two on very short notice, on pretty short notice.
Jamal Hill was coming back from a really bad injury. Yuri went through a war against Rakic. And neither of those guys are going to wrestle.
And both those fights were short notice as well, for both of them. Because the Yuri one was a replacement for something or another.
Conor Chandler.
Oh yeah, because that fell through, and that was a more fun fight for a lot of people, me included. That card got better because they tried to do Diego Lopez, Brian Ortega, and Brian Ortega pulled out. Then he had Dan Ige, which that fight was awesome too. And then it was Khalil Roundtree, which was hilariously bad matchmaking.
I mean, it turned into a good fight. Khalil held his own.
Oh, yeah.
So don't get me wrong in that regard, but Khalil had no claim to a title fight.
Yeah, Khalil's stock went up, not Pereira's, right?
Yeah.
Like with it. Pereira stayed the same with it, right? Like, it didn't... Topuria KO'd, not just beat, but KO'd 2 out of the 3 top featherweights ever. He KO'd 2 top 15 all-time fighters ever.
And he broke Max Holloway's chin. Like, Max has been legendary for how tough he is and his ability to take punishment. Topuria being the guy who did it. It's the definite feather in his cap.
And how he did it, he wasn't down in that fight. It wasn't like a Saturday night special Tank Abbott punch from all the way over here last minute. It was calculated, dare I say, Try-esque in how cerebral it was.
I don't like what Try said.
I don't like what Try said there. Tell him, Try. This was clown. That's what I was thinking.
We watch way too much OSW.
Not enough, I think. Have us back on the show, please.
Please do Hollywood Rock as your next story arc.
I did get to show a fan OSW for the first time. Or not a fan, a friend of mine OSW for the first time. And he was like, I've never got into the Main Event Mafia. I'll show the first episode. Internally, though, I was like... that. So, and he was like, I was like, yeah, they do an ad break questionnaire and they get like other YouTubers, if they like their stuff and stuff like that to come on. Oh, that's cool. It's like, yeah. I was like, I like these guys a lot who do this for this one. And he's watching and he goes, oh, these guys are kind of funny. That's you, Joe. Like, it took him a second because he, I was like, yeah, that's me and Carl. He goes, oh, that's awesome. And I was like, yeah.
A little bit of trivia about that as well was all done in one take. And if you actually watch the start of it, you could tell Joe is trying his best not to laugh.
Because we both came up with a small, like not a script, but like a framework, And you and me both were like, hey, I'm going to throw a curveball your way. And because the game plan was you were going to say, hey, everyone, welcome to, the classic intro we always have. And you went, hello, Noggers. And I went, Oh my gosh, we're actually and like that's in that moment. It was really funny, and it started setting in what we were doing, because they reference the Nogger candy bar a lot, or ice cream bar a lot. And so when you said that, I went, "Oh my god, we're actually doing this!" And he caught me off guard. I don't know how to react, and it's me just trying not to crack up laughing throughout. um, Very fun, and uh, I feel I was. It was really cool because I was the one who came up with the question. Was trying to think of a question, and I said, "Dude, he fought Randy Couture. The Vikingi from Helsinki fought Randy Couture, and we can always be like, is it Brock? Ooh." Because they always do that, like, red herring.
I read the live comments, and most people were either saying Brock or Shamrock.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, yeah. That means we got him. That's awesome to me. Yeah, that's. We've done a lot of great stuff here on this channel in the 3 years I've been with the INC family. We have done a lot of great work. That is my crowning achievement.
Yep, and it's going to
being on OSW.
It's going to be a crowning achievement for the winner of this poll here. Now, I went into this thinking it was going to be a 2-horse race. There was actually a runaway winner. 50% of the vote, so congratulations from everyone who voted on this poll. The male fighter of the year, Ilya Topuria.
Awesome. He deserves it so much more than Pereira.
And even more...
Nothing against Pereira, but...
Even more interestingly, Joaquin Buckley actually beat Pereira in the poll. Buckley was second.
Wow, I disagree with that one. That's crazy.
I'm going to put that down to people who follow the channel, maybe knowing that we don't like Pereira, kind of seeing the same side of things that we do.
Mm-hmm. We're influencing you.
So kudos, guys.
More than you know.
Can I cook to you?
Can I go? Yeah.
Let's see if we agree with their final vote on the main poll here. So, actually, I would say the second from last, the penultimate poll, it is the fight of the year. Although I will say, Joe, did we really need to run a poll when the most obvious answer was Raquel Pennington versus Mayra Bueno Silva?
It had to have been. That is another crowning achievement because we called that fight literally exactly. We said exactly how that fight would go, and I told a friend of mine, I said, why watch that fight when me and Carl can just tell you what's going to happen before it happens, and then it happened that way.
Silva would start strong, chase the submissions, but the adrenaline dump, her aggressive style, gas out, Rocky takes over final 3 rounds.
We called it exactly. Yeah, that was pretty sweet. That was pretty sweet.
I will say, I know we obviously have the meme between ourselves of that fight and sort of making it out as if it's sort of like 5-star masterpiece. It's not. It was a dull fight. I will say, though, one of the reasons I think it is worth rewatching is, when they get the instructions from the ref and they go back to the corner and the crowd usually go, all right, here we go, title fight coming up here. Listen to that crowd in Canada. There is no reaction whatsoever for that fight.
With the best fans in the business, too.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
Honestly, yeah. Justin Trudeau, an anti-Justin Trudeau chant, got the biggest crowd reaction during that fight.
It's amazing. Incredible. I don't dislike that fight. I think the fight's fine. I definitely would. It isn't a fight I'm going to go rewatch, but watching it live, I was like, oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah. The only sort of, and I say this as a neutral fan, you need to know the Rocky story to get some enjoyment of it.
Yeah. I think the Pena fight is better, for sure. Even if the decision's bad.
Yeah.
I think it's a bad. Unironically, no meme aside, no bias aside, it's a bad decision. I think.
Like, people aren't going to want to admit this, and the UFC are never going to do it because they've straddled everything to that Kayla train. They want that belt on Kayla ASAP. Rocky has a strong claim to a rematch. She's not going to get it, but given how egregious that decision was,
probably should be Rocky.
Yeah. One thing I will say, though, is that I've seen Rocky's social media, and because all logic seems to be, bearing in mind the matchmaking, it's going to be Rocky versus Norman next. Apparently, Rocky said that it's probably not going to be Norma. So I kind of wonder what the UFC are going to be playing with this. What I fear is going to happen is that we know how the UFC overvalues how popular Nunes is. I've got this awful fear they're planning Pena Nunes free, and they're going to do Rocky Kayla. Just a good feeling. Because then Dana can say to Rocky, hey, you still see yourself as the champion. Prove it by beating the number one contender.
That's fair.
That's I don't know, just a good instinct. And maybe it's just me being a bit... it's kind of like that meme on Austin Powers when it comes to Nunes. Like, why won't you die? Just go away. It was going so well. We had kind of... The cat was away. The mice were finally playing.
The landing on Nunes. Why won't you die? I love that movie. I still think about that every time I tease doing a Ronda joke. I always imagine you hitting the button in my chair. Woo! I'm not dead. I'm just very badly burned.
I still quote Austin Powers quotes from me friends and me family.
There's a guy on YouTube who does edits of like movie characters or TV characters in video games, and he did Austin Powers in one of my favorite video game trilogies ever in the Mass Effect games. And it's so funny how good and how perfect they fit, because in that game you can romance like some of your squad mates and stuff like that, your crewmates, like alien races, and it's him on like a Mass Effect style spinning bed talking to another character. Do I make you horny, baby? Randy. Like, it's so funny. I could send it to you afterwards. I'm very curious who wins this fight of the year, because I thought I picked the dark horse. So I'm kind of...
There was a runaway winner. Wow. Before we get to that, though, were there any of the nominees that really piqued your interest?
I love Brandon Roybal, Tetsuro Taira. I love that fight. Mateusz Rebecki, my tech pick, Oralby, was good fun. I did enjoy that fight. Lewis McGrillen and Dean Garrett.
That got my
Dean
vote.
Garnett.
I think that is an incredible fight. Like, them two drop each other like 15 times between them.
I didn't watch that fight until I saw the nominees. I will be honest. Admit that. Didn't watch it until I saw the nominees. Loved it.
We did get a write-in poll. Someone nominated Charles Johnson versus Josh Van.
That fight's awesome.
Yeah. Charles Johnson's a G.
I like that fight a lot. Gaethje Holloway is a fantastic fight. It's an incredible fight, honestly. If it didn't have that finish, it would still be on the short list, but you have to take that into consideration. But my pick was Esteban Ribovic versus Daniel Zellhuber.
Bonkers.
Unbelievable fight. That was my pick. Ribovic Zellhuber was so good. On my favorite card of the year, by a good margin, honestly, was Noche UFC. Even with that co-main event, like as much as we meme it, even with that co-main event, that was my favorite card of the year. One of my favorite pay-per-views in a very long time, honestly. Like, and that's just how good that card was for me. You know, you mentioned Norma Dumont earlier, and she fought on that card with Irene Aldana. Horrifying cut.
Aldana still has the scar on her nose.
Yeah, it's an incredible cut. Like, that's one of the most insane visuals ever. Not at all how I expected that fight to go, which is fun because I like watching Norma Dumont, just not watching her fight, and that fight was fun. So we're improving. We're making headway.
I expected this poll to be a lot more competitive. There was a runaway winner for this one. 61.5% of the poll. I don't personally agree with this choice, but majority rules. Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway. UFC 300 is the fight of the year. Personally, I think the knockout raises it 2 steps. I think without the knockout, it's a good fight, but a clear max win. And I think that maybe kind of holds it back a little bit. Because the things I value in a fight is sort of momentum shifts, closeness, competitiveness, and especially if you have like striker versus grappler as well. I do like the sort of ebbs and flows of that. With this, it was kind of an obvious Holloway victory, even before the final 10 seconds. And I think that it was entertaining, don't get me wrong. I think there's better Gagey fights out there. I think there's better Max fights out there.
Oh, there 100% is. They both have better fights. That's their best fight this year. And I think that's probably my number 2 fight of the year.
I get why
I think I have it Yeah. I think I have it slightly above Royval Tyra. Even as good as that fight is, I think I have it slightly above that fight. But yeah, I think I just have it slightly above that fight. They both have better fights. I mean, I think Gaethje Chandler, Gaethje Dustin too. If it wasn't for that KO being so early, like that would be one of my favorites ever as well.
I love Gaethje Eddie. I feel like I'm the only person who thinks Gaethje Eddie is.
Gaethje Eddie's insane.
Because what I think that fight has as well is Gaethje is obviously taking a lot of punishment, but by the 3rd round, you're starting to see the low kicks take their toll. Eddie's struggling to stand. And you know as we're getting into that final minute or so, something is going to give. And you don't know which way it's going to go.
You have 2 hammers dropping, and you wonder which one's dropping first. And that fight's awesome. Gaethje does not have a bad fight in his career, probably. I love him and Palomino in PFL.
Brilliant.
Love those fights. Those fights made me a Justin Gaethje fan.
I've got to cover the World Series of Fighting at some point on a future video.
Oh, so good. So good.
Maybe it might be happening in 2025. But before we do that, though, it's time to talk about the videos from 2024. We have a list of them on your screen right now. Now, at the time we created the poll, we had released 23 videos over the course of the year. I'm not going to list all of them to you. I'll only keep the ones which actually got multiple votes here. But before we do that, Joe, was there anything that stood out for you in terms of videos that you liked, videos you disliked?
I got to help you with the 10 greatest Pride fights, which was super sweet. So that one was awesome. 5 worst tough coaches is always fun because I'm a big fan of when the Ultimate Fighter was really good. Like there was a streak it had that was pretty untouchable for me. I'm not a reality show guy, but I love tough, just MMA in me. I loved. I think it's seasons season 4 is even really good. Season 3 is probably when I go, oh, I want to watch this show much more often. All the way until I think when the show started getting kind of bad was probably the Roy Nelson, Shane Carwin season. Even if the Matt Serra, Matt Hughes season isn't great.
That's
I think.
Danzig, is it?
Yeah, Danzig wins that one. I don't think that season's very good, but it's okay. It's fine. It's probably the worst one in that run, but I really like the one with Chuck Tito, Court McGee winning. I love the one that Tony wins with chicken poop turned to chicken salad. Brock Lesnar versus Lou Poley, I believe his name was, trying to be the head coach of the team over JDS. Creating that was really funny to me. JDS such a nice guy, and they're like, hey, he's telling me something completely different, and it's causing us to lose. Huh, why is that? And he talks to me, he goes, I think you're coaching him wrong. Okay.
JDS. I'm
sorry you think that way.
JDS wasn't made for reality TV. He's not a reality TV personality.
And I think that was kind of the fun for me on it. I think that made it really fun, personally. I like JDS a lot back in the day. Trying to think of another season I was really... I mean, obviously, Top 10 is like a lot of people's favorites ever. My favorite ever is BJ Jens Pulver. It's my favorite season ever. There's just too many quotable things that happen in it. What's his face? Gabe Rudiger in the sauna. Like,
Put me back in.
B, put me back in. Just put me back in, man. And then, of course, the classic. See that guy? That guy's a punk. No, man, that's a warrior. And probably my favorite moment in Tough History is BJ Penn running on the treadmill. Andy, get out of here! I told you you're bad. Get out of here! Like just casually running. Andy, get out of here! I don't have a say in it. I don't have a say in the matter. Oh my gosh, Tough was so good for so long, but there were some bad coaches on Tough. Rampage being two of them. You know, I mean, it is what it is. He was a bad coach. What happened to Cain Velasquez is always interesting because he was one of my favorites ever. Bad Fighters with Great Resumes is a very interesting one because like Michael Johnson will never not be considered like him and Paul Craig are the two guys I instantly think of. Ubereem, the UFC years.
I enjoyed that one. I enjoyed studying Overeem, and I think because you can kind of, from both angles, you can see it as both a good run and a bad run. Because it wasn't Ubereem, but he still fought for a belt. And I think as well, I think the best videos for me, when you do those sort of MMA Years videos, I always find, is I don't like some people suggest, oh, why don't you do Fighter X or Fighter Y, that kind of thing. I think you've got to have some substance beyond the fights. Because I had somebody suggest, why don't you do Chill and Bellator? But it'd just be kind of like, Chill fought X, said something funny. Chill fought Y, said something funny. With Overeem, you kind of have all the stuff for like the horse meat, the suspension, the Bigfoot fight was a big upset, going to Jackson Wink, reinventing himself, fake tap, Francis, the final run. So you had a lot of different sort of chapters to the Overeem story.
Yeah. You had to get a good amount of years to choose and help tell the story that was there. I still love Tommy Toehold has a fake Overeem quote from his impression that I still quote to this day from that era of Ubereem with the horse meat thing. And he goes, "This is Buttercup. It is my meal for the night. I like to name the horse. It makes the horse taste better." I'm like, that is perfect.
Little bit of trivia as well. If you notice the end credits for the Overeem video, it's the theme tune to Black Beauty.
He was chomping down on Mr. Ed, dude.
It was either going to be Black Beauty or Mr. Ed.
Yeah.
Some of the other ones I personally enjoyed, because a lot of the time I enjoy learning about the sport as I do it. So there's some videos which I legitimately found out a lot of information. The Megami Fuji retrospective was a lot of fun to study, and I felt like I was doing a service as well because Megu is kind of overlooked as like a women's MMA legend. So it was good to sort of raise her profile to an audience, and it didn't get many views, but I didn't expect it to.
She's one of my all-time favorites for women's MMA.
Yeah. Some of the other ones as well, which I kind of enjoy putting together. I've got to be honest, and Joe will testify to this. Sometimes I will just make a funny thumbnail, and I'll think, can I possibly get a video out of this? And kind of like the challenge of trying to do so is something I like to take on board. And there were two that came to mind with that, which was the Women's 145 retrospective.
Felicia.
For Felicia Spencer. It's just it's the grin and the flexing the guns as well. And also Grasso at strawweight. And it kind of worked as well because we were doing sort of Mexican Heritage Month, so she was going to be fighting in Noche UFC, so having Grasso kind of fit with that. And it did a lot better than I thought it would. I think it got about like 17,000 views.
Well, I mean, that just shows you that there is a correlation between fans of feats and MMA.
I love that I included that clip at the end.
I love the comments on that video because some of them were like, she's so adorable. And no one said, oh, I'm so happy her and Joe are happy together. No one said that, I thought. But one of them made me laugh. He goes, man, y'all are thirsty. It's like, I mean, she's not like a smoke show. She is just so adorable and attractive. like totally. I think everybody gets it. Like when they see her,
Well, the winner
they go, "Oh, that's her appeal."
the winner was one of these four. Famous fighters
Ooh.
you never knew fought in Pride. The Megami Fuji retrospective. 10 greatest Pride fights. And the strawweight struggles of Alexa. Which one do you think got the votes?
I'm gonna have to go with. For the joke, I'm gonna go say it's. I'm gonna vote for the. We have a lot of foot fans. I'm gonna go with the Alexa Grasso.
And it's the foot fans which are going to be celebrating right now. The INC video of the year is the strawweight struggles of Alexa Grasso.
Excellent, excellent. I myself am not a foot fan, but I think that is so funny that there is a Venn diagram of foot fans and Alexa Grasso fans. That there is crossover.
I am not.
I think that is.
I am not
hilarious.
doing best feet in MMA.
I have made that joke before, but when it comes to the Patreon of like even exclusive content, not feet pics of us.
I mean, MMA
made
Guru
that
might
joke.
make that video. Lucas Tracy might make that video. We won't be.
Yeah, it's not us. Not up to us. Our little doggies, as I call my toes, are little. I'm kidding. We're keeping our little doggies off the camera. Sorry, everybody.
And on that kind of surreal note, it is time for us to end the INC 2024 awards show. We want to say a big thank you for all the support that you've given us throughout the year. And we hope that you continue to support us over the next 12 months, both here on INC Live, but also on the main channel. Now, this would be the time when I'll be bigging up the fact that we have a video coming out on the Friday. But I have to hold my hands up here. I did mess up with the scheduling of the most recent video. So that one is already online right now. We have done a deep dive on the dark age of the middleweight division. So we're going back to 2001 through to 2006 and looking at the title reigns of people like Dave Monet, Murillo Bustamante, Evan Tanner, through to Anderson Silva beating Rich Franklin for the title, UFC 64. So if you are an old school fan, or you're someone who's curious about a bit of a dark time for the weight class, that is your place to go to. In January, we also hope to have another video out where we will be talking about a guy who many people considered the original Francis Ngannou and how his career didn't play out the way that many people expected. Over on INC Live, Joe, I'm sure there's a lot of people who are wondering, obviously you're going to be with us at the preview show, the post-fight reactions, but also they want to know, when's the next retro review coming out?
Never. No, I'm playing. It's been a big delay. I'm very vocal about it, obviously, on the channel. Got a new job. Been very happy. I hope everybody can tell. Carl, you've even mentioned before, like, oh, you seem much happier. Like, I am. But I'm on daytimes now. And because my schedule took a complete 180, so it's like been trying to figure out the times of when I can do things and when everything works out. So it's been a little awkward to shoot, but I have one done right now. I'm literally going to send it to Carl and get it taken care of. And I'm also planning on shooting another one. But looks like UFC 92 is up next. And then Giblert versus Bendo, which is one of the best cards on Fox, maybe the best Fox card ever.
Which was a holdover from December, that one there. Because we did want to try and get that one out in December, obviously, because the theme was people who fought for UFC titles on their debut. We put together the poll, that one ended up winning. To sort of like try and fit in with Pantoja versus Asakura, because that was the big gimmick of that one. In January, though, we're going to be going over to the Sunshine State. We are going over to Los Angeles. We had a selection of classic events that took place over there, and in particular at the Staples Center. So UFC 311 is going to be taking place in a brand new arena, but we're going back to the old school one for that card. So all of the nominees for the UFC 311 poll were fights that took place at the Staples Center. Joe is, I could see him just trying to find the shortlist there. So Joe, what were the nominees?
Removing the feet pics from Grosso.
What were the nominees, and what will we hopefully try and get out by the end of January?
We had, excuse me, I had 312 on there. But we had UFC 60 was one, which is Matt Hughes versus Royce Gracie in a very, very fun fight for me because it's
That got my vote.
yeah, I voted for that one too. We had UFC 104, Lyoto Machida versus Mauricio Shogun Rua. Ironically enough, the next one was UFC on Fox, Shogun versus Vera, which has Machida and Ryan Bader, easiest fight in the light heavyweight division. Poor Ryan Bader. Daniel Cormier killed him in one line as the co-main event. So both the guys from 104 main event fighting on the same card in UFC on Fox. And then UFC 184, which was Ronda and Kat Zingano. And it was a 2-horse race. UFC 60 had 22% of the vote, but UFC 104 had 56% of the vote.
That took me by surprise. I did not expect 104 to win, and I didn't expect it to win by that large a margin.
I thought 184 was winning. I was pretty convinced 184 was going to win.
I kind of wanted it to win because of the thumbnail.
That's fair. Yeah. That's fair.
One of these,
I wanted 60.
One of these days, I'm going to try and contrive a poll so I can only get the card that I want to do. It's kind of like how it's like, you know, like when they do like a Taboo Tuesday in WWE. It's like, do you want these people to have an arm wrestling match? Do you want them to have a lingerie contest? Or do you want a barbed wire steel cage death match?
And then Shelton Benjamin gets the IC title over Chris Jericho. Oops. Well, that was Cyber Sunday, I think. But I love that story. It was just everyone expected Batista. Shelton Benjamin wins in a landslide. Uh-oh.
Didn't Coach finish third in that poll?
Yeah, super funny. Yeah, and then Shelton Benjamin, like, because that match was decided that day and he had no idea he was wrestling, him and Jericho were like in the ring going. Jericho goes, "I'm gonna put you over. I was supposed to lose this match. I'm just gonna put you over." And he didn't know what Shelton Benjamin's finisher was. So Shelton hit him with a move and he just didn't kick out.
Was it a T-bone?
Yeah, I think it was a T-bone.
Shall we?
My brain said fisherman, but
shall we tell people what the subject is for February, or do you think we'll leave that until we do the 311 show?
We have the 311 show coming up pretty quick in 2 weeks. So
I think a lot of people are going to like the subject for February. I know you are.
Oh yeah, with one, it looks like one's already won the votes with 58%, and if so, we have a very good thumbnail.
So we're going to call the election now.
Probably could, but we probably could. It's a landslide victory so far, but who knows? Weirder things have happened.
And on that cheery note, that is all the time that we have for the 2024 INC Awards Show. Once again, a big thank you to everybody who has contributed to the poll, supported us over the past 12 months, and we'll try our best to keep providing some fantastic content both here on the INC, INC Live, and over on the Patreon page as well. So that has been Joe Neal. I've been Carl Bainbridge. And as Joe teased there, we will be seeing you again in just a few weeks' time as we travel to LA for UFC 311. This is the INC. Thank you so much for watching.